Welcome to the Literati Scene with Smoki Bacon and Dick Concannon, and co-hosts Suzanne McDonald and Joanna DiTillo. So stay tuned.
Our guest today is Christopher Krebs. He's over at Harvard University in the classical department, and he's come out with his latest book called, you want to call it?
A Most Dangerous
A
Book.
Most Dangerous instead of The Most Dangerous Book. This is a extremely interesting story in the sense it all starts back in the time of the Romans and moves through a great number of generations. Tell us, how did you pick this book to bring it right up to date?
So it was in 98 CE that the Roman senator and would-be historian Tacitus composed a little ethnographical treatise on the tribes in the north of Europe that the Romans referred to as the Germani, what people today would translate as the ancient Germans. And he composed a treatise of about 35 pages describing their lifestyle, their look, their warfare, political organization, and then ultimately going into the various tribes, because there were many, many different Germanic tribes. The text was then had an immediate impact. We find traces of it just a few years later, but was then basically, along with the other Tacitine works, not exactly an object of attention. So we have very, very few traces of it in late antiquity and then also in the Middle Ages, but it was then rediscovered in the 15th century.
That was, it was found in a monk's...
Yes, it was found as, again, so many other classical texts, it was found among, within a monastery, a library, taken care of or not taken care of by the monks. Rediscovered in the 15th century and then immediately put to use for within a political debate and discourse.
Well, you had the Italy and the popes were the powers at that time, and they had considered these people just a step away from barbarians.
Yes.
But they took, I think they felt that they were going up there with their Christendom and saving the barbarians, and they wealthy people and the Pope sort of fought over this text. Tell us about that.
Well, so it took a while for the text to actually come to the surface and reach Rome and humanistic circles, and thereby become basically public property. The very first man to actually use it was Cneo Silvio Piccolomini, the later Pope Pius II, and he used it in order to show that ancient Germans had been barbarians, whereas contemporary Germans were well off, cultivated, and they should thank Christianity and the Curia in Rome for that development. So he used the Germania to portray the German past as barbaric, basically. Just a few years later, another Italian humanist would use the same text, again Tacitus Germania, to present the German past as an age of warrior-doom, heroism, glory, morality, and opened up a completely new perspective on the past. Now, what we need to know is that the so-called Germans, because of course there was no Germany at the time, felt themselves in a conflict, in a competition with the south of Europe, with the Italians. So the Italians were really the trendsetters of the Renaissance. And of course the Italians looked at the Roman past and the Roman glory, and that was their pride. The Germans were desperately looking for something similar. Sick of hearing from the Italians how great the Roman past had been, and that all the Germans had to point to basically was a desert. So they seized upon the text Tacitus Germania and also Gian Antonio Campano's interpretation and used that to develop a glorious past of their own.
Wasn't there an element in there also that they were not mixing with the other European tribes at that time,
yes,
and stayed rather pure?
Yes, yes. Yeah, that's probably of a most dangerous book. That is probably the most dangerous paragraph, because Tacitus writes about the Germanic tribes that they were indigenous, and he also writes that they really kind of stuck to themselves and they did not mix, as you say, with other people. What we need to know there is he is writing within a firmly established system. For an ancient ethnographer, the question that one of the questions that you had to address was, are these people original, are they indigenous, indigenae, or have they actually immigrated from somewhere else? Are they advenae? That's how he himself actually presents it elsewhere. So he basically only had that choice, either one or the other, and he decided, well, this is what they do. They were born there. And then he follows another stereotype saying that they really stuck to themselves. They were just, they did not mix with others. Again, this had been said before of other people, like the Scythians or the Egyptians. So it's just an ethnographical commonplace.
Well, let's bring us up to the modern day. Say Germany came together in the late 19th century, and then this was picked up basically, as your book tells us, by the Nazis, Himmler and the rest. Tell us how that, to us, makes this dangerous book.
Yes. So if let's just keep keep working with the one passage that you just mentioned, because this one is then used by the German humanists to discredit the Romans, because the Romans had been a people of immigrants. That's what one of them, Heinrich Bebel, actually says. Whereas the Germans, they had always been in the same place and were pure. So this particular paragraph then gets used through the centuries by various European intellectuals. So in the next century, it would be used, the same Tacitian paragraph would be used by linguists arguing that the German language was as pure and unadulterated as its people. And the contrast there would be to the French language, which was basically just a hybrid from the Latin language.